Good evening, and welcome to the Bellevue City Council meeting for Monday, July 23rd, 2018. First item on the agenda is our Pledge of Allegiance. If you could please rise. We will not have an invocation this evening. Pastor Madison is not available. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item number 3, meeting is called to order, and roll call, please.
Mr. Hanson.
Here.
Mr. Cook.
Here.
Mr. Shannon.
Here.
Mr. Preister.
Here.
Mr. Burns.
Here.
Mr. Modry.
Here.
Thank you. Item number 4, this meeting is conducted according to the Open Meetings Act, which is posted in the entry to the council chambers. Item 5, approval of agenda, consent agenda, minutes, and advisory committee reports.
Item 5A is the approval of the agenda.
Mr. Shannon.
I move that we approve the agenda. Second.
A second by Mr. Burns. Discussion or questions? See none, please vote.
No.
Am I the only one? I can't vote. Oh.
Can't vote yet.
Mine didn't come up yet.
Has it still not come up yet, Mr. Preister?
yet.
Is everybody else good? It's just yours.
I can try logging in again.
Why don't you do that?
Everybody else is good.
It does show I
Come
am
on.
logged in though.
Okay. Move the little Jeopardy clock.
That's not what I want.
Get your back arrow.
Yeah.
He's trying to be a planning commission member.
Oh,
There you go.
there, we'll get the right meeting.
We have one of those in the house.
Okay.
We good?
All voted yes.
Thank you.
Item 5B1 is the approval of the, 5B is the approval of the consent agenda. The following items are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. Unless the mayor or city council asks to have one of these items removed from the consent agenda, in which case it'll be placed in its normal sequence on the agenda. Item 5B1 is the approval of the minutes from the July 9, 2018 city council meeting. Item 5B2, approval of claims as presented. Item 5B3, approve and authorize the mayor to sign the annual Nebraska Transportation Assistance Agreement with Nebraska Department of Transportation.
I'd move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
A motion by Shannon, second by Burns. Discussion or questions? See none, please vote.
All voted yes.
Thank you. Item 6, special presentation, none. 7, liquor license, none. 8, ordinance for adoption, third reading, none. Ordinance for public hearing, second reading, none. Item 10, ordinance for introduction, first reading, none. 11, hearing on matters other than ordinance.
Item 11A is the public hearing on the event license of Freedom Running Company for a 5K, 10K, and half marathon Beat the Heat running event utilizing Hayworth Park and the Keystone Trail on August 11 from 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. Associated with this item is item 11A1, a special designated liquor license of Half Full Inc. to serve beer at the conclusion of the Beat the Heat running events in Hayworth Park on August 11 from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m.
Thank you. I'll now open for public hearing on this item. We'll take them 2 separate public hearings, 11A first. Anyone wanting to speak on that item, please do so at this time.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Joe Ramos, and this is my wife, Jamie.
Welcome.
And we represent Freedom Running, and I'm just going to go ahead and give you a quick rundown of our plan, and then if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. So essentially, we are holding a running event like we did last year, Beat the Heat Part 2. We are doing a 5K, 10K half marathon. As it's written, we're going to be utilizing the Hayworth Park and heading out on the trail. It's going to be an out and back. And then essentially we're looking to start the race about 06:30, and we'll be all out of there by 12, probably 11, but we just put 12 at the latest. And then, did you guys want me to talk about 1 as well, or?
I'll have to close this public
Oh,
hearing
okay,
and then
no
open a
worries.
separate public hearing. Is there
Okay.
anything else
So
you'd like to add to the run?
we're just doing this event, and for this one, we always like to raise awareness for a special charity and cause. And this one, we're raising awareness for veteran suicide.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Are there others who would like to speak? I'll see none. I'll close this public hearing. I'll open the public hearing on the liquor license. Item 11.1.
Okay, perfect. So then with the liquor license, essentially, so with every applicant, or I'm sorry, every registrant that's over the age of 21 will have the choice if they want to get a finisher's beer after the race. The company that we're partnering with is Half Full Inc., and they're doing business as Infusion Brewery down in Omaha. So essentially, we are going to have a roped off kind of little zoned area that the beers are going to be distributed in. The security measures to make sure that nobody underage or no issues are having is we have 3 security personnel with designated security uniforms. They will be checking IDs at the entrance to our little, I guess, beer zone. So they will be giving out wristbands upon entering. And then on further check, Infusion Brewery will be checking the wristbands before they distribute any type of drink. So it's going to be a limit of 1 per person, nothing sold afterwards. I know it says 9 to 12, but again, it's probably going to be more like 9 to 11. But like I said, we just wanted to give that 12 just to give the extra little buffer. And it's not one of those things where people are just kind of going to hang out and drink. It's kind of like a one and done type deal. So I think that's pretty much all I had for that one. So like I said, we just wanted to make sure that we have all of our ducks in the row security. So again, there's going to be ID checks, a designated area, security representatives, and then again, before they get the drink, they're going to be checking the IDs. And what?
Danielle's here representing Infusion.
And then we have an Infusion representative as well if you had any further questions in regards to the plan.
Okay. Mr. Mangiamali?
Mr. Ramos, with the special designated license that you're seeking here, you understand that your roped off area has to have a double rope?
Double rope? Yep, we can do that.
Okay, good.
Not a problem.
So you can't reach across and hand your buddy underage
I like it. Yeah, but there will be no drinking outside of the double roped area. They will be immediately taken away.
Are there any, Mr. Cook?
Thank you, Mayor. Is Freedom Running Company nonprofit or?
It's a little bit of both. So it's a profit company, so we're not a 501c3. We're an LLC, but we partner with charities for every event. Charities that are kind of important to us. I'm a vet, so I like to do a lot of veteran charities. And my wife is what?
We've given another $4,000.
And then over the past year of operations, we've donated about $4,000 to different charities, local ones. So the ones that don't get that much attention, not so much the big ones that are nationwide, but we try and kind of find the ones that we can invest back into the local community. So
We've seen this just a couple of times. Why the drink after a run? Why is that becoming what appears to be starting to be a big thing? And I don't understand. I mean, that would never convince me to go do a run because I can drink a beer after it. I mean, well, I don't understand the connection and why they are.
I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I totally agree with you. I don't understand the connection as well, but a lot of people that motivates them to come out. I mean, obviously they're not gonna come out solely to get one drink, but that's the trend with the industry. So any race, big race that you'll go to, they'll always have the option to get that finisher beer. I mean, obviously you're not going to want to drink it during the race, but after the race, it's, people like to relax and have a drink.
And it's one per person.
One per person, correct.
And right now we have 123 participants, but only 70 of them are of age. And always people also refuse the beer. So it probably would be cut in half at that as well.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, that is a good question. I wish I had a why answer, but there's a lot of people that like to have a drink afterwards. Just like I don't know if you guys have heard that taco ride, but people go ride on their bike 10 miles, have a couple beers and a margarita, and then ride back. So personally, I wouldn't ride my bike after having a few beers, but
Mr. Shannon.
You partially answered my question already. I was going to ask you about number of attendees. You're coming in at 6 a.m. It's a small parking area. Softball's coming in at 9 a.m. So can you guys be respectful and leave some spots for softball and start directing people up toward the grass for parking?
Definitely.
As that fills up? Because if you're going to have 70 cars in there, you're going to fill that lot before softball gets there.
For sure. I mean, and that's the thing last year as well. We had a lot more come out last year, but then again, we still have a couple more weeks of registration as well. But we had about, I think, 220-ish folks last year, and parking wasn't really an issue. They would just kind of they weren't parking on the side or where the campers were, but there's a couple parking lots that, were available that they just kind of got into.
Unfortunately, this year with the flooding.
Exactly. So
Yes.
The ball field parking lot wasn't our first choice, but my neighbor, Brian Madison, he works for the parks department, and he told me that where we had it last year is most likely not going to be ready to go by the time our event is. If it is, then we'd love to use that section instead. But like I said, we'll make sure that we're not taking up all the room for the softball coming in.
Thank you, sir.
Did they
Mr.
come
Roberts?
in at 9?
9.
Yeah, and so honestly, we're starting at 6:30 in the morning, and I think the majority of people, they're running the 5K, so a lot of them are going to be gone by that time too.
Yeah, most likely. So pretty much the only runners out there will be half marathoners. So, and then the few people that want to stay afterwards, but we'll be vigilant, I guess, on to make sure that we're not taking up all the spots and everything.
Just share.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I sent out many emails before to the participants, and I can, absolutely put that in there about,
We won't charge the softball people, so it'll be all right.
Mr. Roberts.
Just to give you a little clarification, we do have a tournament August 4th at Hayworth. In case of a rain on the 4th, then we did reserve, or we're going to use Hayworth for the 11th as a rain date. So there are no games on the 11th. And in case it is a rain date, we are going to move the tournament to Baldwin for the morning and then move back to Hayworth for the afternoon. So it will be an empty parking lot that morning.
Mr. Modry.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to ask a little bit about the condition of Hayworth. I guess parking isn't an issue now, but if they had to go on the grass, would that be
Well,
okay?
the parking lot's on the dry side of the levee, so it's not impacted. The run actually runs on top of the levee, then goes on the trail. So all of that is on the federal levee, which will be, again, on the dry side of it.
Yeah, okay. If something did You'd get a big rain or.
If we had a
release.
catastrophe and something big hit,
Just
you'd have to
cancel.
cancel the whole event. There'd be no place to
Understandable.
do it, so.
Yeah, obviously,
Okay.
people aren't going to want to run in that type of condition anyway.
Are there any question? Mr. Sullivan?
I just wanted to clarify on those special designated permits, that has to be issued to a nonprofit or licensee, but half full is the actual applicant, which is a licensee, so that shouldn't be any problem. And I was just gonna make a personal comment. I participated in the Shamrock Fun Run in O'Neill for 20 years, and you get Irish stew and beer afterwards, and it's a big draw. So I think people like to talk about the run and have a beer afterward. It's just, it works.
Oh, yeah.
Are there others that would like to add? I see none. I'll close the public hearing. What are the wishes of the council? Mr. Cook?
Thank you, Mayor. We gotta approve the event
One at a
license.
time.
Yes. I'll make a
11A.
motion that we approve the event license application of Freedom Running Company for a 5K, 10K, and half marathon Beat the Heat running event utilizing Hayworth Park and the Keystone Trail on August 11th from 6 a.m. to 12 p.m.
Second.
Second by Mr. Hanson. Discussion, questions? See none, please vote.
You still good?
So far.
All voted yes.
Thank you. Item 11A1. Mr. Cook?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make a motion that we recommend approval to the Nebraska Liquor Control Commission of the special designated liquor license application of Half Full Inc. to serve beer at the conclusion of the Beat the Heat running events in Hayworth Park on August 11th from 9 a.m. till 12 p.m.
Second.
Second by Mr. Burns. Discussion, questions? Mr. Modry?
Thank you. I'll be abstaining from voting on this item for religious and personal reasons.
Any other comments or questions? See none, please vote.
Five yes votes, one abstention.
Thank you. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Registration's still open if you guys want to come out.
Yeah, thank you. Item 12, resolutions.
Item 12A is resolution number 2018-17, approval of the 2018 CDBG action plan and authorization for the mayor to sign SF-424 and the certifications.
Mr. Preister.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move to approve item 12A as just read.
Second.
Second by Mr. Burns. Discussion or questions? Mr. Cook?
At our last meeting, I had questions for the Play Again Sports, and Ms. Highlander said she would try to have a representative come here, and I didn't know if there was.
Can we open a public hearing?
I probably should.
Make the move.
I'll make a motion when we open this item for a public hearing.
Second.
Second by Mr. Shannon. Discussion, questions? See none, please vote.
Those we'd mix it up for you.
Hold on just a moment.
I don't think we need to do that. We never did that. Yeah, everything is subject to public input.
Can we just do a voice vote on
It's coming.
public hearing? Thank you. Now over for public hearing. Welcome.
Mayor Sanders, council members, my name is Ira Watson here representing Backyard Sports LLC. I was not at the meeting on July 9th. I was out of town. I had let Ms. Highland know that. And I recently came back from Chicago to help chaperone a Youth of the Year event with the Air Force and the Boys and Girls Club of America. So I understand there were some questions about backyard sports, I believe along the lines of verification of income and having a facility to use for our services.
Mr. Cook.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, sir.
I just explain some of the questions I asked is I had not heard of this business before. I didn't know if there was a physical building, a presence in Bellevue. I would just like to hear from you on what you do and what you would do with this money.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just explain briefly how it all came about and how I started backyard sports. My wife and I moved here back in 2008. We lived at the Rising View housing development on the base. And just to make a long story short, I used to go out in the backyard all the time with my son to play sports. And there's a high deployment population on the base, and a lot of times, mothers or fathers would not be around. So an event that would start with my son and I playing sports would turn into a group of kids who were, looking for that type of adult interaction. So after a few months of buying all the Gatorades and all the equipment to keep these kids entertained, my wife said, maybe you should start a business because it seems like there's a need for that mentorship. Well, I didn't do that for a few years, but in August of 2017, I decided that, I think we may have something here. I work on the base as the sports director for youth programs and youth sports. And outside of that, I saw a capacity to do some mentorship. So I started Backyard Sports as a means to get kids involved with sports. We don't focus on the traditional sports like tackle football. We do games such as dodgeball, medic, and modified versions of basketball, meaning we, lower the goals so everybody has a chance to score and to play and things of that nature. So we started out at Bellevue East as a sponsor of their facilities. As you all know, during football season and basketball season, those facilities are being used quite a bit. And so eventually we moved to the Bellevue Lead Center. So my business is mobile, which means I take all of my equipment. We set up, we have the event whatever facilities we may rent out. And then when the event is over, we pack up and go home. So I don't have a building per se, but I do have the equipment.
How do you envision getting a group together to say meet at a city park and where you would bring in say 20, 30 kids and you're going to play baseball or a soccer game? How do you look at this as coming together versus, what you're talking about? A lot of us did that just growing up, like you were saying. You were doing it with your kid,
Yes,
your son in your backyard in the neighborhood. To me, I guess how would you get this to go and to work in the lower income areas of our city? And then how do you attract these kids? And then how would we account for the activities? If you have 20 kids there, what's the price tag on that for this money that you're asking for?
Right.
I just don't understand how that all comes together.
Well, we advertise using Facebook and social media. And so we've had events in the past year. We just wrapped up our running club, which we took kids to different parts in the city like Hayworth Park and other parts. And at the end, they participated in a 5K. But to service this low and moderate income, in the past, I've worked with the Bellevue Housing Authority with a lot of donations and things of that nature. And our plan is to service that and verifying their income by looking at, for example, Medicare, free and reduced meal recipients, and those individuals who are getting state services assistance. Our plan with these funds is that the low income and the moderate income holders would not have to pay for these services. So if the funding were approved, then we would, buy the equipment to put on the clinics, to put on, for example, the what we call open play clinics, and it would pay for the instruction, the meals that are provided, such as at the end of the season parties and things of that nature. So we'd be able to put on a regular skills clinic for those different sports and those activities, but they won't have to pay for that.
Now, I believe there's a match, $1 for $1. Where does the funding come from your side? I mean, maybe it's out of your pocket, but do you have other? I mean, I think it's almost 27,000, and I think there's $1. I mean, if this is approved,
right,
and there's $26,825, I think there's got to be the other side of the equation is another $26,825.
Okay. Yet I wasn't aware of the dollar for dollar match for that.
And maybe, Rich, maybe I'm misspeaking.
It's on contract.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Then disregard what I just said, because we were talking about, you're going, wait a minute. So what you would do is you would hold an event. Do you bring in people that, I don't want to say experts, but if you're going to have a baseball clinic or a football clinic or a soccer clinic, are you going to bring people in there that truly can show these kids? Is it one Saturday for 2 hours, or is it 4 Saturdays for 2 hours where a kid would really develop a knowledge and maybe a skill for that particular sport?
Yes, sir. Our clinics are 7 weeks. With the 8th week, we actually put on a real game with real officials. So it's over a 7-week period, and everybody that we work with is trained and vetted. So they have CPR training, they have the skills training, background checks, and things of that nature. But it's over a 7-week period, with the 8th week being the week where they get to showcase their skills and what they've learned.
Okay.
So it's actually a duplication of what I already do in the military sector for the military kids. It's the same idea and the same concept, and we also follow the National Alliance of Youth Sports Guidelines, which is NAES.
So you must have a pretty good background.
Yes, sir. I have my degrees. One degree is early childhood education. I'm certified as a child and youth sports administrator through NAES. I'm studying at Bellevue now to get my bachelor's in behavioral science, and which I'll graduate in October. I also have a bachelor's in occupation education and a associate's in dental assisting, and all that's just from my military training.
Were you in the Air Force or the military?
Sir. For 12 years, yes, sir.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I'm gonna go with it.
Mr. Shannon.
All right. Is any of this money going to you personally for salaries, for time that you're spending?
Well, my plan is to be profitable within 3 years. For example, with the running club that we just had, the money that was left over, everything went into advertising. So I'm not personally taking a salary at this time. I don't project or see that in the near future, because I'm trying to get the word out, and to there's a cost to acquire customers and to keep them coming back, and I understood that when I went into the business. So the gentlemen that are working with me are all retired military gentlemen who want to give back to the community. I've worked with them in the past professionally on different levels, and so I don't have to pay a salary to employees or anything at this time as I'm trying to grow the business. So I'm not taking a salary, I'm just reinvesting whatever funding may be left over to help grow the business.
So you're committing to us here tonight that this $26,825 is going to go to the program, the advertising, the equipment?
Yes, sir.
Everything's going into it?
Yes, sir. Just like I submitted back in April, the application, and in detail of what it would be spent on.
Unfortunately, those are not shared with us, so.
Okay.
Mr. Cook.
Just real quick, would you please communicate with us, maybe via email? It's on the city. I'd like to know, like, when these events are being held and the times, and especially at the end of the year, I think it would be neat to come and see the group together, sort of at the conclusion of this.
Yes, sir. That won't be a problem.
Maybe one of us will show up, just watch it, but I'd appreciate it.
That sounds good. Our last few events that we held, we did that at the Lead Center. Once the basketball season started to slow down, we held some events there, and even some birthday parties where people paid us to go in and entertain their kids. And it was a good time. But yes, sir.
Mr. Preister.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say that I think young people especially need mentoring, need guidance, need physical activity, need to get outdoors more, sitting in front of computer screens and all the things that I don't even know the names of. So
Fortnite.
the effort that you're doing, I applaud.
Thank you.
Our questions have no reflection on that. We're just trying to be sure of accountability. And we know that Ms. Highland and our program does that, but we didn't have the opportunity to sit in on it or to go through what the committee did. So please understand the questions and the things that you do, we value, we appreciate, and we would hopefully be able to participate and see some of them to
Thank you very much.
appreciate the work you and all the other volunteers do to make it happen. So thank you.
Thank you. If I may say one more thing, I'm a big fan of the organizations in town that provide youth sports services.
Yes.
My son, he participated for years with BGSA, lead center teams and leagues and things of that nature. When I designed this program, we specifically looked at times, events that would not conflict with those other organizations. Everything that we do is usually held on Sundays, Sunday afternoons, which is a downtime, winding down time for most families. And then the nature of the sports that we actually provide, for example, dodgeball and kickball. There's nowhere else that holds those sports on a regular basis. So we purposely designed it so we wouldn't compete or conflict with the other organizations around.
Mr. Shannon.
Yeah, I would encourage you to share with the city the events and timing of those events so that maybe we can get this on a community calendar. You turn around, the barrel-chested gentleman in the back of the room in the red shirt, that's our newspaper representative.
Okay.
You want to talk to him and see what you can get out of him free, and let's promote this thing.
Okay, thank you.
We're still open for public hearing. Are there others that would like to speak on this item?
Did you sign in, sir?
Did I sign in?
Yeah, would
Yep.
you,
There's a
or
there should be a clipboard there, if you could
Oh, right.
sign in.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, yes, before you close the public hearing, yes.
You guys also have questions on the other application.
Right. Yeah, we want to hear from the Buckley.
Thank you again for your commitment to the community and your service.
Oh, thank you very much. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
We're still open for public hearing. Did you have any more comments, Mr. Shannon?
I would like to hear on the Buckley project. We also asked for a representative on that project. Do we have someone here?
We do.
Yes, my name's Rick Buckley. I represent Buckley Construction.
So this is phase 2 of a project. How much money were you given in phase 1?
About $66,000.
Okay, and you match that one for one?
Correct, yes.
Okay, and what's been accomplished up to this point?
Right. Unfortunately, we've had some delays. I did not realize that dry cleaners have a potential for toxic waste. And in the contract with the CBDG, I have to verify that the property is clean. We're going through that process now. I'm still waiting for the Nebraska Department of Environmental Quality to come back with their report, which will be founded on what TL Geotech is still finishing up. So I'm actually waiting for, I'm going to say, permission to get started.
Okay, so
And so far, I've spent $40,000 in testing to date.
Okay, so that would be 20 of your money, 20 of the phase one money?
Yes,
Okay, and we've accomplished a level 1, a level 2, where are we at?
we're beyond level 2.
Okay.
And I guess I'm not sure what we would call this next level, but I've done the 1 and the 2, and now we're actually doing water table tests in various locations on and off my property. The tests on my property have came back at minimal levels, but some off-site levels have come back higher than that.
Now, is this from test wells that have been drilled?
Correct? I'm sorry, what?
Are the higher numbers from the test wells that have been drilled?
Yes, off property, yes.
Define off property, unclear.
They tested my property, but they're also testing what they're calling downstream from the water table apparently moves. And so they're testing downstream to see if there's any other potential hazards in that, downstream. And so until all of that testing gets done, the state of Nebraska is not going to give me a final answer or determination until all the testing is done and turned into them. And so I'm still waiting for that to get finished up.
And how much do you think you can get accomplished this year?
I can get a lot accomplished this year, I believe. I believe that by the end of the year, I can have the building framed in, the roof on, have it weather tight. Part of the concrete work done. Like I said, if I can get permission to get going, I have a guy that's potentially going to at least get the parking for the senior center in. That was kind of one of my delays also. Apparently we had a misunderstanding between me and the guy that was drawing up the parking area. And he drew it up where all the parking was on the north side of the building, or north side of the property, I mean. And on the south side of the property, he had a water retention pond for runoff from the property because you can't run stormwater out into the street. I went back to him and said, we need that parking closer to the senior center. And so and I talked to the city, and they said that they were okay with this, putting 90-degree parking right off the street onto my property, so that the seniors can park basically on the street, and all they have to do is walk across the street to the senior center. And I believe that I can get that parking done yet this year as well.
Okay. Do you have your all clear letter from the state yet?
No, I do not. That's what I'm saying. I have to have that letter before I can start.
And what is the state telling you?
What's that?
What is the state telling you as far as their time frame for getting this done?
I haven't had a conversation with the state about that as yet, but Robert from Teal Geotech said that he is almost finished. I talked with him last week, and he said he's almost finished with his report, and he will turn that report into the state soon, I'm hoping, and then they will make their determination after he submits his report to them.
All right, question for Rich. Rich, we can't get these funds replenished until they're spent. So he's 3 to 4 months out from getting an all clear letter. So we're not going to get this first phase money expensed this year, let alone get into the second phase. Do we really want to be putting money into this right now? Or is that better something to apply next year?
That's your decision.
Okay, but we're not even going to finish phase one money this year.
We've discussed the timing.
Right.
You understand the timing. Mr. Buckley understands the timing for this
Yeah,
money.
because we don't get our funds reimbursed until you spend it. And so if you're not going to spend it this year, committing more money to this project that's just going to be tied up to prevent us from spending money next year doesn't make sense.
I believe that I will get most of, if not all the money, most of the money spent this year.
I don't think we're even going to get started. We're already in July. It's going to be 4 months before you get an all clear letter.
I'm certainly hoping that it does not take that long for the state to get back to me on that. The information that I'm getting back from Robert indicates that my property is okay. It's the other property that's not okay, that may not be okay. And so I'm not sure what the NDEQ's response to that is going to be, but I'm hoping that I get that response soon.
And we've had the discussion, if you don't get the money spent, we take it back.
Right.
And we can reallocate those funds. So you decide if you don't want to approve it on the front end, then we'll have to decide
we've
how to
still got-
reallocate.
Yeah, we've still got 46,000 with his match. That's, 92,000, to cover for this year. I'm just not sure it's realistic to put more money into this project right now till we get into another year. I don't know.
There is a committee that you have appointed your nominees to that committee, and they worked on this also. So, but we're ready to do whatever.
Yeah, well,
the council.
The committee's treating us like
directs us.
mushrooms, So we don't know what the committee did. Nobody shared that with us. So we're making our own determination based on the best information we can glean out of this. Jim?
Mayor.
Mr. Modry?
Thank you. Mr. Roberts, in your experience, how long does it take for DEQ to come back on studies that are presented to them with approval or disapproval? Or?
Oh, it's hard to say. It depends on the project, the manpower. We've had things go through in 30 days. We've also had things last 6 months before they come through.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
like I said, it depends. There's a lot of things that go into it.
The last project I did, I had wells drilled in September, and we got the all clear in January. And that's fairly typical.
Yeah, like I said, it depends on manpower,
Sure.
their backlog, and everything. There's a lot of factors to it.
Right.
So it's really hard to say how long it will take.
A month to 6 months,
Could
probably a
be.
range.
Yep.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? Mr. Preister?
Thank you, Mayor. From my understanding, you know that if the money isn't spent, if it's allocated today, that you don't get it. You just said that.
Correct.
So if you do get it and you're cleared and you're going through the legal process, you can expend it. If we get it back, we just reallocate it next year. So we're not out anything. And for anybody who thinks it may not be the most worthy project, we get the money back and we reallocate it next year. It doesn't go back to the feds. They don't put a lock on it. We have to go back through the process, but we still have access to the money. So being sure that we're spending wisely is a good thing, but it may or may not be spent, and we have no control. You have no control over NDEQ and what they may do.
I believe that this money that you're talking about tonight, I will have all of next year, and I believe that I can get that all done by the end of next year. That's my, that's my timeline. I think a year from now, I will be very close to being complete.
Okay.
No matter what because there are things that I can get started on over there that I'm ready to get started like right away. Tearing out floor, taking care of some things that need to be done, and I can get started going up almost immediately. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you.
Mr. Cook?
Thank you, Mayor. One thing I just want to bring up is if we have contamination on or off property, it's something that has to be resolved and taken care of for whatever reason, and we have some monies available. So Mr. Buckley is going to try to expend those, try to resolve the contamination, and take a building that hasn't been used. I don't know what it's going to turn into. I don't know what you're doing with it, but it's the property that's empty with possible contamination on property or off property. It's all got to be resolved. And we have a funding source that may resolve it.
Mr. Hanson?
Thank you. I guess my point is we have a committee that goes over all these figures, and I hate to see us getting into micromanaging what they've done. They go through everything. They're looking at the fact if you get the money, if you don't spend the money, it'll come back, and we have to reallocate it. So, it just seems like for us to supersede it and take away everything that committee does and try to go that way might be a foolish thing to do.
Mr. Buckley, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, I don't think so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you. Are there others? The public hearing is still open. I see none. I'll close the public hearing. Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion, we approve Resolution 2018-17.
We already had a motion on the floor.
Oh, that's right. We had a motion
Oh,
and a
that's right, we
second.
did. And then we-
Public hearing. Yep. So if there aren't any other questions from the council, Mr. Shannon.
Just a point of clarification, Rich. If we spend that money this year, we get it back next year. I mean, CDBG funds are replenished, right?
As soon as those funds are spent, it's a matter of days before we get reimbursed from HUD.
So if he's not gonna spend that money this year, we'll spend it on sidewalks, we'll get it back next year.
We will have a
and we can
chance to
spend it next year on
reallocate
it.
that and spend it next year, yes.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make
Is that-
sure of, because we could spend it twice before he gets to it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Severson. Are there any other questions from the council? See none, please vote.
Vote is 5-1 with Mr. Modry voting no.
Thank you. Item number 12B.
Item 12B is resolution number 2018-18, approving the extension of the independent contractor agreement with Abbey Highland for CDBG/grant services.
Mr. Preister,
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve item 12B as just read.
Second.
second by Mr. Burns. Discussion or questions?
Yes.
Mr. Preister?
Just want to make the comment that I think we're very fortunate to have Ms. Highland as our representative. She did live here in Bellevue, and her husband was stationed in the Air Force at Offutt, and I think he did a service to Bellevue in her being able to work for us. Unfortunately, she's not still currently living in Bellevue, but she's highly qualified, is being sought by other organizations because of her skill, and I think that she is an excellent person filling a very needed role.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Modry?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree, Mrs. Highland is highly qualified. However, we started out in 2016 with a $30 per hour rate. In 2017, we increased that to $37 an hour, a 23.33% increase. And now we are proposing to increase that to $39 an hour, another 5.4% increase. So over 2 years, that amounts, as you compound it, to a 30% rate increase. Yep, she may be worth it, but this is taxpayers' money, and that's pretty, anybody would like to get a 30% rate increase over 2 years, I'll tell you that much.
Mr. Shannon?
Just a comment to respond to questions that came up last council meeting on this topic. I know Mr. Severson came to the microphone and he said that, this represents a $25,000 savings. And so we did push him to produce numbers to prove that to us. And I think it was Mr. Frederick that asked the question. So Chuck, yes, Mr. Severson was wrong. The savings was actually $37,000. So we did push the button. We did get actual numbers, and it represents a savings of $37,000 over a full-time person. So it is a good savings. It is a good program. I'm not sure we need to put another raise in right now, but at the same time, we do want to keep this person and keep them going. The other thing I want to comment on is that we received an email. I think all of the council members got the email tonight from Mr. Hanson, who, not you, different Mr. Hanson, suggested that maybe we should look at just extending this contract long enough to get the new mayor on board and let him make a decision about whether or not, you know, they want to continue these contracts and things, so that, or they could decide to continue it or terminate it, you know, whatever decisions they're going to make. So that proposal was brought by email by one of our constituents. So if you guys want to think about that and see if that has some merit, I don't know. That was what I had.
Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Mayor. One thing that sort of I think is very important in this conversation is that the military members have always had issues on having their spouses find good employment in town. I know recently the state of Nebraska, I'm not quite sure what they all did, but they made it to where, I'm going to say the word easier, it's probably not the correct word, for, say, a military spouse who has a teaching degree to actually get into a classroom and start teaching, where I think if their degree wasn't from here or certificate, they had to jump through some different hoops. And if you're only here 2 or 3 years, it's maybe not even worth for that professional to try to get into teaching. But one thing that the military has always tried to do is find gainful employment for their spouse. And I think in this particular case, you have Ms. Highland, who's a spouse of someone actively in the military that potentially could be moving every 2 or 3 years. And even though she's quite a distance away from here, I think she does an excellent job, and it just also gives us little opportunities to show support to our military and their spouses. Thank you.
Are there any other discussion, questions? Seeing that, Mr. Modry.
I'd like to move to amend Resolution 2018-18 by replacing the $39 per hour rate with $37 per hour, the current rate, in both the fourth whereas statement of the resolution itself, and then also in paragraph 5 of the accompanying independent contractor agreement.
Mr. Severson, would you like some input?
I hope you really aren't going to micromanage this. There's some decisions that this council has made that cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and trying to micromanage a $39 an hour for up to a total of 1,200 hours. It's supposed to be a democracy, something where you vote and majority rules. I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is an idiocracy. So let's go ahead and think about putting our minds together to save some of the big numbers because we've got challenges. We've got challenges coming up. This program, and by the way, it's paid for by HUD, and they're happy with Miss Highland. So I think we ought to, I don't know, I would sure hate the city to not be able to retain her services, because you folks would be, well, you'd be saying goodbye to your program. Maybe that's your point, is to get rid of the CDBG program. But I think it's reasonable, and I think that you should approve this contract. It's for 1 more year.
When is the program going away?
It doesn't go away as long as we keep providing HUD good information and reports. In fact, it's gone from a year or so ago from around 300,000. Now we're up to almost 360,000 a year. And it is supposed to help the mid to lower level income. And as you know, we've talked about this. There are some of these projects that are individual businesses, that are trying to do something for that group of people. But we also are moving towards trying to improve infrastructure in that area of town that will help everyone. Everyone will benefit from that. And so that's what we're trying to move towards. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Severson. So we have amendment on the floor.
I'll second it.
A second by Mr. Shannon. Discussion or questions on the amendment? Give you a moment to add the amendment?
Yep.
Does she have it? Okay. This vote is for the amendment.
What's this one? That's not it.
It's an old one.
Which one did it go to?
Well, for some reason it has this one in there, so I'm deleting that one. So. The motion to amend has failed. Mr. Hanson voted no, Mr. Cook voted no, Mr. Pricer voted no, Mr. Burns voted no, 4-2.
Thank you. Now on the original motion. Are you ready for the vote on the original motion? Is it showing up?
That's fine. Mm-hmm, yes. Okay.
We ready? Please vote. Did it show up?
I think it's working.
Okay.
You deleted it.
Because you didn't delete anything. It just,
You got
It isn't counting the thousands, 160.
The vote is 4-2 with Mr. Shannon and Mr. Motery voting no.
Thank you. Item 12C.
Item 12C is resolution number 2018-19, approval of the construction engineering services agreement between the City of Bellevue and Alfred Benish and Company for the Bellevue Major Street resurfacing project identified as MAPA-5061, in the amount of $138,597.58.
Mr. Burns.
I move to approve item 12C.
Second.
Second by Mr. Preister. Discussion, questions? Mr. Shannon?
I think we have these corrected, but I'd ask that the mayor be careful as we go through signing this one. There are several places in this where we were identified as the Beatrice City Council. We think we have them corrected, but please watch for that.
I will, thank you. Any other questions or discussion? See none, please vote.
All voted yes.
Thank you. Resolution number 2018-20.
Item 12D is resolution number 2018-20, approval of the construction engineering services agreement between the City of Bellevue and the Nebraska Department of Transportation for Bellevue Major Street resurfacing project identified as MAPA 5061(1) in the amount of $31,282.26.
Mr. Burns.
I move to approve item 12D as read.
Second.
Second by Mr. Preister. Discussion, questions? See none, please vote.
All voted yes.
Thank you. Item 13, current business none. 14, administration report. Comments must be limited to the items on the current report. Are there any questions for Mr. Mangiamelli? Mr. Shannon?
Actually, a question for you, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I read with great interest that you attended the Cox Classic. Can you tell us about that event?
That's upcoming. Oh, no, that was Sunday. So that was, yeah, a golf tournament. And I did it just to network and to represent Bellevue.
Okay. There hasn't been a Cox Classic in Omaha in 3 years.
Well, it was Pinnacle, but by Cox. Yes.
Pinnacle Bank Championship, sponsored by Pinnacle Bank. So I want to make sure, because Pinnacle is one of my banks, I want to make sure we give them proper credit.
Thank you, Pinnacle Bank.
But she was invited by Cox.
Yes.
Next year, come see me and we'll get you into the Pinnacle tent.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? See none, we'll move on to item number 15, public requests to be heard. Any member of the public addressing the council shall abide by council policy resolution number 35 regarding the principles of conduct and decorum, which states any statements made during city council meetings by the mayor, members of the city council, city official and employee, or members of the general public shall not involve impertinent or slanderous attacks on individuals, regardless of whether the individual so attacked is elected official, city official, or employee, or member of the general public. And City Code Section 2-68 regarding the manners of addressing the council. Aforementioned rules are posted inside the council chambers. Speakers shall limit their presentation to 5 minutes.
Chuck Frederick, 1511 Madison Street. I talked about this podium. I can't see Paul Cook or Pat Chance over the top of their heads, so I know they're still there. But the people who watch this on TV don't realize this, but the people in the audience know that when you sit down there, they can't see some of the council people depending upon where they sit. Simple matter, just cut off the top, and we can all see. But I don't know why this really is such a big problem. I've talked about the dog park before in Southwest Bellevue. I see that Omaha is having one at Turner Park with AstroTurf now, and with water, and it's going to be a nice one. I think it's time that we, if nothing else, use some of our community betterment money to have the dog park down there. We have a lot of dogs here in Bellevue and owners, and they'd love to have another spot down that way. So rather than have to drive to Jewel Park or to Beardmore all the time, or to some other city. On that block grant thing, that contract, I do know that one time we had a current city employee doing the block grants here for us. And I'd like to see those numbers of where the savings coming from that you've talked about in private. So just see how that looks. But I just still feel that we should be able to find a contract a writer for block grant writing for somewhere here in the local area. And it could be somebody who already is employed by the city who is doing it on a part-time basis rather than having it the way that is being reviewed. The other thing that, the only last thing that I'm going to talk about is that we talk about accountability. Mr. Preister talked about accountability and how important it is. And I've talked numerous times over the last 3-4 years about having a state auditor come down. And a few meetings ago, somebody in this room told me that the reason we don't want to have a Charlie Jensen from the state audit come down is because it would hurt our bond rating. I don't quite understand that, why it would hurt our bond rating if the state auditor came down and checked our books. I think we need that accountability. Thank you very much.
Are there others? See none, I'll close the public request to be heard. Item number 16, closed session, none. 17, adjournment. Mr. Shannon.
Move to adjourn.
Second by Mr. Preister. Discussion or questions? See none, please vote.
I vote yes. Shut down already.
Did yours go down too?
Do you still have yours up, Mr. Shannon?
No. I did once. I feel like such a Democrat. I voted twice.
Oh, yes.
All voted yes.
Thank you, and our next meeting will be Monday, August the 13th. Thank you for coming out.